Hi there, everybody. Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of August 18th through the 24th. And not a real lot going on this week. The main thing is Virgo energy. We've got the sun going into Virgo. And then, right as it does that, it's going to go right into a new moon at 1 degree of Virgo. And that new moon is really active, of course, with the outer planets that are right at the beginning of their signs. It will actually be in on the midpoint of the Pluto sextile Saturn Neptune conjunction, and it'll also be square Uranus. So that's the main thing I'm going to end up talking about this week. A couple Chiron aspects earlier in the week, too. But just a little business first. The Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog that I do on YouTube. It's been going on for 6-7 years on YouTube now. So if you like what you see, I'd really like you to become a follower if you have a YouTube account. And don't forget to turn on your notifications when you do that. And remember, this is a free service. So what I ask is that everybody pass the link along to somebody else they think that might, enjoy it. Let them make that determination for themselves. But yeah, and then a couple other things to remember. It was a podcast long before it was a YouTube channel too. So it's still available on podcasts. It's exact audio of the YouTube channel, so there's no change in the content. You just don't get the video feed. But I, frankly, feel that really can free you up to listen to it when you might, be, at other times where might not be able to watch a video feed, but you can actually listen to something audio, like when you're driving to work or something like that. So, that just check out the Astrological Winds channel on your podcast app, and you should be able to find several places where you'll be able to listen to it. And remember, also the Astrological Winds channel does have its own Instagram page. So if you want to get it in your newsreel every week, the link to the channel, that's another way to stay in touch. And then the other way always is to check my website for the link to the blogs, www.astrologicalwinds.com. And not only will this week's blog be there, but there'll be like several months of back blogs there that you can check out. And that also has the menu for my professional services. So you can always check that out too, as I've been doing readings for years. And I would love to do that for you or someone you know who's looking for that service. So I'll get into a little more detail on that stuff at the end. But like I said, remember, please pass the link along. Remember, if you're not great with astrology knowledge, to listen to the interpretations. Don't get stuck on the astrological language and miss what I'm saying otherwise. And remember, the blog, the Astrological Winds channel, is telling us, it's about what the astrological weather is this week, what the astrological winds are blowing in this week. So like I said, it's mainly about Virgo energy this week. The sun going into Virgo Friday, and then right on Saturday, that new moon as soon as the sun goes in. But a couple things I wanted to just mention first. On Tuesday, there is a sun trine Chiron, and that is just a really great aspect to tap into new creative outlets, that are based basically on perfecting the ones we already have, the natural talents that we already have. Like as we go along in life, they develop even more, right? They take on even a greater quality. So like what's really great about this aspect is it can make us feel like we have a lot of purpose in life, that we are supporting others, that we are teaching others, that we're making some kind of impact in what we're naturally good at. Our uniqueness is a worthy gift, and that can make us feel very confident. We can help someone out maybe in a certain situation that day or early this week. Help do that, and even like that may even just be as simple as giving people a different perspective. Because one of the things that's great about the Sun trine Chiron is it does give us this openness to wanna not only like teach more, but to learn more too, because and that's a very healing kind of energy. When that's happening, it really brings in an energy that feels really good. It feels self-satisfying, and feels like it substantiates our being somehow. So, and then Friday, there's another Chiron aspect, and that's Venus square Chiron. And, this is not necessarily the hardest aspect. It can show that there may be a relationship, a certain relationship, maybe an intimate one, a close one that's got some emotional charge in it that is at some kind of stress level right now, that there's a lot of tension that's been built up, and like because of that, in the current state of it, it's like a blockage to the ongoing development of it. And many times that's just a temporary thing. It's not something that, oh, this torpedoes the whole relationship, the thing's over. It may just be like there's things that right now are stressful in life that's affecting the parties or one of the parties in a relationship that is just blocking it from its ability to grow forward right now. So, there it may be even a thing where certain ones need to take a break, that you just need to get some different perspective what's actually going on there, and it can be a little bit painful too with our loved ones, people that are close to us, family, SOs, really good friends can, who know where our weak spots are, may hit us there during this time. And, and that can feel, that can be very painful. That can feel like really trigger sensitive emotions, and we really take it in, so it's easy to get hurt. So you want to really be careful about, first of all, what you say to others, but how you're receiving things too. Like, are you being like overly sensitive, and you're trying to fight what the reality is, that there may be situations that need to still be dealt with before things can further develop, is a good way to say it. This also can once again bring up issues with money that that are painful too, or even like creative blocks in our energy also can occur. And then Friday is the day that the sun enters Virgo. So this is the last third of the summer in the northern hemisphere where the zodiac was created, and therefore it represents mainly the harvesting energy of the summer, of the end of the summer when things are coming to their most like apex point of ripeness and are ready to be harvested, so so this is like, once again, it's with Virgo energy. I've talked about like Virgo energy before. It's a lot about like just being very discerning, wanting to perfect things, having a system that we believe in, having a procedure that we go by, having like a book of rules that we follow and that we know will get us to a certain point. We feel really confident about that. So there's like, this very like energy of like perfectionism in a way, like really being very, very detailed with your energy, and feeling like you have the right way of doing things, that like, that you're gonna get a guaranteed result. And so that also brings up the issue with Virgo, and that being like in a very highly discerning mind can also be a very highly judgmental mind, can be a highly critical mind, especially of other people who don't do things the same way that we do. That's where we can get really like starting, to get really into a judgmental kind of state. And, basically we have a set of standards that we believe in. And when we suspect or feel or look and see other people that are not living up to those standards, we can become very disappointed in them, and that's when we will start to judge and get like that. And that, that's where Virgo can push, people away from them, even if their intention may be good. They have to remember that everybody can have their own special way of doing things. So, it's definitely a good time to perfect your skills again, once more, like just kind of like that Sun Chiron earlier in the week, where you already have a skill set that you're good at, and like you're constantly upgrading, updating, learning more in your techniques, expanding what you're doing, and getting very good at perfecting what you're doing at the same time. Virgo also has a great connection from not only the mind, discerning mind, but the connection to your hands, and like being very crafty with our work, very detailed with our work. And what comes between the mind and the hands many times is tools. So, like, that trifecta works very harmoniously in Virgo: the intellectual mind, the hands, and tools. So, that's another time where we can really, work that energy well and perfect things like that. So, also a time where we can be, Virgo has a lot to do with our health. So this is a time where we can really, look at our health with a discerning eye and be like, hey, do I need to make some changes to my diet, to my exercise, to my, my stress levels, my nervous system, things like that, and once again, be able to, like, perfect some kind of system that is the perfect regime for yourself. It's definitely that. And then, once again, the other thing about Virgo is a lot of it has to do with service. It's on the service axis, and and wanting to serve others, wanting to be helpful to others, and also, like, at the same time, like, that's how we get like a lot of the approval of, of who we are, like having this thing of like, okay, I want to help others out. But the danger is, once again, even when you're doing that, thinking that you may have the only way of doing that, and then getting really critical or judgmental of others, and actually having them being driven away. So that sets up our new moon on Saturday, which is, pretty early in the morning, because the sun goes into Virgo on Friday, and then, like, on Saturday at one, it goes into about 1 degree, and that's where it's hitting the moon. And so with the conjunctions early Saturday morning, basically. And what's interesting, it's going to hit, once again, all those outer planets that are at the very beginning of their signs, and make aspects with all those outer planets. So, in your own chart, you want to look to where 1 degree of Virgo is, whatever house that is, and that's, it's a new moon. So it's at every month, it's a time where you plant seeds, new things, or it's a good time to, you don't have to, but it's a good time to plant seeds of new things, new projects, new approaches in that house that, where 1 degree Virgo falls in your chart. So if it's in the sixth house, then planting new seeds in your work, or the way you do your routine, or, the way you're approaching your health, once again. So, so that's one of the things you want to look for. So, and so, like, the moon in Virgo, once again, very much like the sun in Virgo, it is getting, the moon is our emotional side. It's, the side that's seeking, some sense of security emotionally, and so with the moon in Virgo, once again, just like the sun, it wants to know that a system is being followed correctly, that's going to get us to a certain point. So it finds its security in, like, perfectionism, in having, like I said before, a book of rules, and following those rules. And so, they, just really believes that you have a set of duties and procedures that you want. And so, Virgo, because of that, it projects like an emotional maturity to its energy. It really can be very well mannered, actually. Energy and will remain relative. It's an earth sign, so it can stay very grounded. But it definitely, like I said before with the sun, definitely believes in that there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things. And in the moon's case, is very emotionally attached to that. So that's where we can, react without even thinking and like quickly fall into that judgmental thing without realizing it. But the moon in Virgo wants to have a logical approach to things. Actually, it doesn't like a lot of emotional stuff. Emotions are messy, and Virgo is neat, And the other thing to remember about Virgo, because of its connection with health, once again, when it's feeling stressed about that stuff, when it's too much of that judgmental mind and feeling really stressed out, it can get very work its own nervous system up, get very worried, get very like, tough like that. And that's the kind of thing that can bring illness in. But definitely a time where you will work hard and you'll stay neat. And like socially, we're more reserved. We're more conservative. We're not as like, we're more introverted. Is a good way to say it. And once again, feeling that in order to get emotional support and love from others, we have to give that first. And that's not necessarily so. We should never feel that we don't deserve love unless we give something first. We are all like, for who we are, deserve love too. Now, what gets tricky with this new moon also is all these connections to the outer planets, because both three of them are connected in a grand aspect that we call a yod. So, Pluto has been sextile Neptune pretty much for decades and continues to be so. And now, right now, we have Saturn conjunct Neptune. So basically, Pluto is sextile Saturn and Neptune at the same time. And they're all retrograde right now. So they have the sextile going on. And the new moon, which is the sun and moon conjunct together, are at what we call the long midpoint of that sextile between among those three planets, and therefore in a grand aspect pattern that we call a yod. And I've talked to this about before. A yod looks like an arrow basically pointing in one direction, and those three planets up here, which are usually it's two, but there's three involved, are pointing towards the other one down in that point. So this is like, for a grand aspect pattern, this is literally the most fateful aspect that we have. There's not a lot of control that we have with a yod. The energies are not very congruent, so they can be very erratic, very hard to nail down, very, very hard to like figure out how to get on top of and stay on top of, and almost impossible to control. And see, unfortunately, the tendency when we feel like things are like, out of control is to wanna try to control things more. And really that's the worst thing to do with a yod. That is like literally like giving yourself angst and fear over what may or may not happen. And really, the yod is trying to teach us to be present, is one of the big things that it's trying to teach us. It's like a roller coaster ride. I've said this before. For me, that's such a great analogy. It's like you just have to let go at a certain point. It's going to take you up and down and all around, right? And you're going to land eventually and get out and have a safe landing and feel elated and stuff. Well, if you can stay in the moment with the yod, that's the same way it should work for you. It's like, it's almost like the yacht is saying to us, listen, there is a destination you need to get to, but you can't get there yourself. You're not actually capable of that. Like, so I'm gonna like put you on this ride and push you along the way. And as long as you don't resist, this payoff is going to be really good. It's going to get you to a point where you really need to get to, and you weren't able to get there before. So that's really the key to working and the energy of the yacht. It's about making a lot of adjustments along the way, and just like, you know, literally enjoying the ride. And if you can do that, the payoff can really be immense at the end of it. You can get through a lot, but if you're trying to control, then it can get very, very difficult. Um, I think a lot of this one is going to be asking us once again, how much are you willing to work for what you believe in? Like, how much are you willing to put in there? Like, what are you even willing to give up in order to get what you believe in and want to see happen in the future? I think that it's going to have a lot of energy that's tied up in that. And there may be things that like come up from the past that we have to struggle through to get through. There may be stuff that comes up in relationships that we have to struggle through to get through. And like, there may be like people and things that are in our way that, a lot of the yacht has to do with releasing and letting go and adjusting to things. So like, what are we going to do to get the smoothest landing that we can get? Is to release these things that we need to release in order to move forward in a lot of that. So it's interesting because, like, for me, you can have a lot of really odd experiences in a yacht on an individual level. It can feel really like wow, this is really like just quite a ride I'm going through. And your emotions can get really stirred up with the new moon involved in that. So there may be like, some really odd occurrences. You may meet some very peculiar people and have extraordinary experiences with them. I think a lot of this yacht too, it's tricky, but I've been seeing this energy with the Saturn, Neptune, Pluto already. I think a lot of it is it's very difficult right now to be accepted as we are in our current life situations that we are in order to just get by, if you can follow that. I mean, it's a little bit of an odd energy, but like just like trying to get by and being the authentic person we are can be really, really difficult right now. And it almost seems like, the things that all these things that we want don't seem very possible to get. And in an odd kind of way, those two things are in conflict with one another. Like, it's like they're almost like blocking one another. So it can be really strange on that level. It can feel like, you're not getting a lot of support a lot of times. It can feel like, that, certain situations or people are blocking you, and you can feel really suspicious of certain people. Really, to me, once again, the key is trying to get our ideals into reality, to trying to bring some structure and discipline into this new energy that we're wanting to put out, to try to find some balance there. But it's difficult, especially with like the moons and the emotions involved. We can be very, very sensitive, and feeling like we need to give in somehow, and that's not the answer. In fact, the thing we need to give into is the sacrifices we need to make in order to make those ideals real. That's where you should be giving in, not giving in, like, oh, it's futile, I give up. This is like pretty much like a never ending story, is what the attitude you need to take is. So that's where you should be giving in. You shouldn't be allowing others to victimize you or play, or be some martyr. You want to keep, negative influences away from you that, who would lower your confidence right now, because the times are tough enough as it is. So, like, if you need to, this is even a good new moon to take some time out by yourself and, just get a better assessment of that and not allow others to, like, make some kind of negative impression on you, put you into fear, put you into guilt, you know, instead trying to find the energy in others that are going to actually support you, and help you out. And many times I think with this yod, you got Pluto involved. Those are the people that you can share your shadow and deepest energies and emotions with. And that's the people that, can help you move forward and get support, where you can get an understanding on a very, very deep level. And that can help us not only understand ourselves, but understand other people too. And then we can be supportive of one another. But I mean, it's about, like, if we can get down to literally the root of who we are during this yod, that would be a really good thing. But there's going to be a lot of changes, basically during this new moon because of this. Psychologically, emotionally, that can be very intense. And there can be times where we're feeling like we're totally being manipulated by other people in situations and get really suspicious of them. And those like things where we need to discern whether we need to separate from that. Now, the square to Uranus, too, at the same time as the yod, it's the new moon is squaring Uranus. So this shows that, the events of these times right now are very hectic. They're very quick. They're very upsetting. Like, things are constantly coming in and shocking us over and over. And it's very hard to process one before something else comes up. And so a lot of us are feeling a lot of turmoil inside because of the rapidity of these, rapidly changing events that are just really upsetting. And so, like, it can be in our personal world through others, or it can be in a bigger sense with shared tragic events like natural disasters, man-made disasters, things like war. But this energy is really explosive. It's really quick. It's really impulsive. And so what is hard about that is we can easily overreact to these situations, make impulsive decisions, and that ends up messing us up even more, and we quickly regret it too, because, like, it can really come back to bite us quickly. So you can see how, like, if the yod thing already is, got us on a roller coaster where we're not really sure where we're going, you add, like, all this other tension from a rapidly changing world and influence that can coming around right into your personal life through people. And it can be like, yeah, like a really, really a time where you can really just get impulsive and not think things through and really, mess yourself up. So you need to come back to that Virgo energy of, this is where we really want to use the judgment and discerning and that kind of energy of Virgo before we make decisions that are reactionary in this rapidly changing world that we feel like we don't really have a lot of control of on a personal level. Now, interesting, Mercury is the ruler of this new moon. Mercury is the ruler of Virgo. And remember, last week it just went direct in Leo and was actually in the sextile to Mars all week, which I talked about in last week's blog. So that actually shows me this actually whole lineup does give us an opportunity actually to move ahead, to be motivated by what we believe in, and that it's a fighting point. Like, if you don't stand up for what you believe in when the world is going crazy around you, then when are you going to stand up? I mean, so to me, it's like, it's a time where we really, may be inspired to keep pushing ahead and fighting ahead and just trying to go and do what we can do, what we feel like we have the power to do, and do that, and be motivated by that to do something about it. So I think that's interesting because it does have a good payoff there, in the sense of like the ruler is like, okay, maybe we can work with this Virgo moon, slow down the impulsive actions, and then really get solid about what we do want to push ahead and get opportunities to actually do that. It's interesting too. Mercury does trine Ceres too, at the same time, which shows we can be very effective in getting our messaging out if we cover all the points and details that Virgo needs to do. So there you go. There's still ways to work with this energy, is my point. In a world of like what's constantly changed and a lot of upsetting things and feeling like we're on a roller coaster of destiny, there are ways that we can still work with this. So overall, I think this is really an incredibly dynamic new moon. I mean, part of it is feeling like we're being swept along by the tides of history and time right now, and yet at the same time, we can work within those confinements and with a great, a great desire to bring change and transformation based on our ideals. And despite like the restrictions we're feeling around us, it's interesting to note too, and I talked about this in the monthly. One of the only long-term aspects this month also is exact this weekend, and that's Jupiter semi-square Uranus. And that's, to me, that's really interesting because, like I said in the monthly, it's all about like seeking freedom and and like in an edgy kind of way, and then there's a lot of restlessness behind that energy that wants to seek some kind of change, and that changes that can come very rapidly, just like the new moon squaring Uranus. So this may be a time where there can be like a lot of things that are holding us back may suddenly be released, but we have to also be careful once again about just reacting out of a desire for change without, as a reactionary, basically, blindly, just for the sake of doing something different. And that could lead us even into like a path that is even worse. So we got to be really careful about getting disruptive with this energy. People can act out very individualistically, very impulsively, react very quickly to things, and especially the things that are going on in society right now. The one last little thing I wanted to mention: next weekend, the asteroid Vesta is trying the North Node. So that means I think there's opportunity. There's chances that we can find, or we're finding some groups right now where we have a great sense of belonging to, which can be very helpful in like in a time of changes. It can be very like feel like, oh, these are people that I have a common destiny with, and I can feel like I can help face this energy with these people who share my beliefs, people who I feel in harmony with when I'm with them, in their presence. So that's another thing that could be a little bit helpful in this situation. Is like finding the groups of people that do feel the same similar way as you do, and getting some energy that feels positive. It's like I said, a sense of belonging to that, and feeling like you can work on some of these ideals together. But yes, like I said, a very interesting week in the sense of this new moon really connecting with the four outer planets in aspects that definitely are for us and the way we look at things, distressing aspects that are bringing in change rapidly and irrevocably. And like, how do we work within that when we feel like we're being swept along by the tides? Like, can we find some space where we can do that. And and there's some signs that say yes, we can, but at the same time, we can't escape the reality that we're living in too. Like, so if it's a time of change, what we want to do is like, inject what we really believe in, what our ideals are, as much as we can into that time of change, and finding other people too that we can work with that with. But once again, another a pretty tough assignment that we've got this week. So that's what I got for us this week. Next week, the star of the show is going to be Venus. She's going to be going into Leo, and then, of course, once again, right at the beginning of a new sign. So she's going to be aspecting all those outer planets that are still at the early degrees of their signs. So I'll be talking a lot about that next week, and I may actually do this the September monthly next week too. So if you want to get the first word on the bigger things going on in September, tune in next week for that also. So that's what I have for y'all this week. This is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel, and it is a free service that I offer to this world. And what I really like for payback is that you pass the link along. I do accept currency donations too, and I thank every one of you who's ever given one. No amount is too small. Like $5 even helps. It does actually cost me some money every month to put the blog out. So I have a Cash App that's just the $, and then Matthew with 2 T's, Lawton, Lauten. Venmo is at the symbol A with the circle, and then Matthew, once again, 2 T's, and then there's a hyphen up in the middle, not at the bottom, and Lawton, Lauten. And if you'd like to give some kind of currency donation, I would surely appreciate that. Otherwise, really the best way y'all could support me is when you're ready for a reading, or someone who's ready for a reading. I've been a professional astrologer for over 20 years. I was trained by professionals for over 7 years to get to that point. I would love to do your chart. I do all kinds of readings. You need to look at my website, www.astrologicalwinds.com, and you'll find my menu there, and the description of the different types of readings and the pricing. And if you need to do installments on the pricing, you can put half up. We can work on that. I would love to do your birth chart. If you've never had that done by a professional, it will be very different from having a computer or a friend or a dabbler do it for you. Also, I really recommend every year around your birthday, get a predictive reading. If you get a natal or predictive reading in your birthday month right now, I am offering 10% off the price. So don't hesitate on that. And like I said, do all kinds of other readings too: relationship, children, horary charts, election charts, specific questions, fixed star readings. Then I also do group things. I can do workshops, lectures, classes, mini readings for group events. Also, I do tutoring with students. I do have some beginning classes you can buy on podcasts. Still looking for beginning students who might want to do a live class. Any of that stuff, check the website out, www.astrologicalwinds.com, or you can email me directly at mattHue823@gmail.com. All right, that's what I got for you all this week. Next week, we'll look into that Venus into Leo, probably look into that September monthly too. I'll see y'all then.